Okay, students, so the next thing that we're going to look at is, we've got two more things to look at in this section. We're going to look at, in this part, what we call the difference quotient and evaluating functions. All right, so to begin with, we're going to start by looking at evaluating functions. Okay, so this just really is doing arithmetic primarily. So if you're given a function like this is f of x equals 2x to the second minus 1, f of negative 2, what it's telling you is if x is negative 2, then what is the value of the function? So what we do is we just do 2 times that x value squared minus 1. So we're going to work that out to get that answer then. So what we do is we just plug in the negative 2 goes in for x, and we have to follow order of operations when we do that. Sometimes students in this class are not real familiar with everything about the order of operations. So in general, you kind of work inside any kind of a grouping symbol. So that could be a parenthesis, it could be braces, brackets, absolute value. You got to work inside of that first. And then what you do usually is you do exponents and you do square roots, but you have to do those left to right. Then what you do is you do multiplication and division. And again, you do that left to right. You don't always multiply before you divide. Students seem to think that a lot of times, but it's not true. You go left to right when you multiply and divide. And then the last thing you always do is add and subtract. And again, you do that left to right. So it depends on where it is in the problem. Okay, so on this thing, of course, we do the exponent first. So the first thing I'm going to do is just this part right here, and only this part right here. So if you do negative 2 to the second, that's 4. So that would be 2 times 4 minus 1. Then we do the multiplication. We multiply before we subtract, so that would be 8 minus 1, and 8 minus 1 is going to be 7. Okay, so the answer to that problem would then be equal to 7. Okay, so we do the same kind of thing on all these problems. The next one we plug in 0. So we do 2 times 0 to the second minus 1. Again, do the exponent first. So 0 to the second is 0. So that would be 2 times 0 minus 1. Then you would multiply. So 2 times 0 is 0. And then finally you would subtract. So that's negative 1. Okay, and you want to be able to do this without having to rely on a calculator, do every one of these problems. Okay, so next thing we do is f of a. That just means replace this x with a. So there really isn't anything to do on this one. You just get to a to the second minus 1. The x becomes a. All right, so again, remember that is a x value in the parentheses. So the answer to that problem would just be 2a to the second minus 1. Okay, so the next one, what you do is, again, you're doing 2 times the x value squared minus 1. Well, what plugs into that is the 2a. So I plug in the 2a, and then I'm going to work out a little bit of basic algebra to do that then. Okay, so, well, we'd have to do the exponent first. So if you do 2a to the second, see, 2a to the second is 2a times 2a. So that's 4a to the second. So you would have 2 times 4a to the second minus 1. Okay, you multiply before you subtract. So that would be 8a to the second minus 1 would be the simplified result of that problem now. Okay, so you're going to do some basic algebra when you do this also. All right, so the next one, again, just start by writing down the function. The function is 2 times something squared minus 1. The something is x squared, so that thing plugs in there. Then you work out the details of the arithmetic. Okay, so what we'll do here then is this is going to be 2 times x to the fourth minus 1. Okay, there's a property of exponents that anytime you have this situation, you multiply those exponents. So that's x to the fourth power. All right, so this will be 2 x to the fourth power minus 1 be the answer to our problem. Some of you are probably going to have to review your rules of exponents and know when to multiply and add exponents. Okay, this one will work out the same way. Again, we say 2 times something squared minus 1. Again, I'm always starting by writing down the function, and then this thing is what plugs into the function. Okay, so we do this, and again, what you'll have here is this part right here. Let me rewrite that a little bit clearer. That's x to the third to the second. You multiply those exponents. So this part here becomes x to the 6. So that's 2x to the 6 minus 1, and there's nothing else you can do on that problem then. So you want to kind of get comfortable with how to do some algebraic expressions. On every problem I did the same thing. I started by writing down whatever I had. I had 2 times something squared minus 1, and you're evaluating that function by plugging this part into the variable. Okay, so that's called evaluating a function. Okay, I go to the next page. I'm going to do one more, and then I'll let you do a group of these problems. So again, what we're doing is 2 times something squared minus 1. All right, again, what plugs in here is this part right here. So if I plug that in, now one thing that happens, a lot of you will know this, some of you may not know this. Anytime you square something, it means that you're multiplying something by itself. So you really end up with the square root of x to the second. Anytime you have the square root of x to the second, it then does that operation and gives you x. Okay. If you don't understand that, look at it this way. If you had the square root of 2 to the second, that's the square root of 4, so it turns back into 2. If you did the square root of 3 to the second, that's the square root of 9, so that turns back into 3. So in general, if you do the square root of x to the second, that turns back into x. Okay, so what you would get here then is 2x minus 1 would be the simplified evaluation of that function. Okay, so I'm going to let you work a little bit on this for a few minutes. So I'm giving you this function. This really should be written as f of x equals x to the second plus 2x. So you want to work these problems out. Now again, the best way to start this to me is just kind of put a set of parentheses. I'd do this on every single one of these problems. I would just write down, build the framework like that, and then plug in that value. Okay, simplify as far as you can, so go ahead and pause and then come back and check your answers. Okay, so you want to go ahead and check your answers and see what you got on these. I've got the answers highlighted in blue. First one's 3, 0, h to the second plus 2h, 9h to the second plus 3h, x to the fourth plus 2x squared, x to the sixth plus 2x to the third. So you can look over the details of this and see if you made any mistakes on that. Again, when I work this one out, negative 3 to the second is positive 9. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. So I write that as 9 minus 6. So that's equal to 3. This one's just 0 plus 0. This one, these right here, there isn't much to do on. This one just replace the x with h, so you get h squared plus 2h. This one, the first step, setting it up. If you're doing 3h squared, you're doing 3h times 3h, so that's 9h to the second. And then 2 times 3h is, oops, I made a mistake on that. I just cut myself on that one. Okay, so let's see, that would be 6h. Like that then. Sorry about that. Okay, so that's how that goes. And then let's see, this next one would just be x to the fourth plus 2x squared. Again, x to the second, to the second, x to the fourth. The rule of exponents you use a lot is this. When you have this situation, you multiply the exponent. So in other words, if you had x to the seventh to the third power, that's x to the 21st. Okay, then this one, same argument, that'd be x to the sixth, 2x to the third. Okay, so hopefully we did okay with that. We're going to move on to what we call the difference quotient. We're not going to really talk too much about what a difference quotient is. If you're going to go on and take calculus, many of you will go on and take business calculus after finite math, and then you'll learn what this difference quotient is. So this is called the difference quotient. What it really does, it gives an average rate of change. It has a lot to do with the slope. So if you're given a function, you want to evaluate f of x plus h minus f of x over h. So I'm going to start this like this. And when you do these problems, you want to learn how to set it up and then perform the algebraic simplification. So this is what I always tell students to do. When you do a difference quotient, start off just by doing 2 brackets, the whole thing over h. All right. And then this is what you do. This part right here is f of x. So that's going to be whatever I give you. So I'm just going to put in 2x plus 3 there. Regardless of what the function is, that goes in the second spot. Now the part that is f of x plus h is going to go here. Well, what that is it's the same thing. You just do this. You just do this. You go, oh, come on. What's wrong with this? Hold on. Let me pause. Oh, there we go. Okay. So what we do, hold on. Problems here. Okay, let me see if it corrected itself. Sometimes OneNote crashes. All right, so what you do here is the only difference is instead of putting 2x plus 3 here, you do 2 times x plus h plus 3. So, to get settled on how to set this up, this part right here is f of x. So that's whatever I give you. The only difference here is it becomes f of x plus h, which just means replace that x with parenthesis x plus h, right? So you got to get that set up. Then what we do is algebraic simplification. What'll happen is that h, if you do everything right, that h is going to cancel at the end of the problem. So we start by doing a distributive property. So 2 times x is 2x, 2 times h is 2h. Then we have the plus 3. This is going to distribute through there. That'll change the sign, so that will be minus 2x minus 3. See, that part right there can be thought of as multiplying by -1, distributing by -1. Okay, then that whole thing is over h. Now, if you look at this, what happens in this numerator? What do you see happening? Yeah, you got some cancellations, so that goes to 0, that goes to 0. So that leaves you with 2h over h. Okay, well, you can divide that out. You can divide out a factor, so the h's go away. That's really just 1 over 1, so the answer of the problem would be 2. Okay, that's called a difference quotient, and what it does is it gives the slope of a tangent line, or a secant line, and you'll learn about that a lot more in a calculus class. Okay, now I'm going to go to the next page, and we're going to do a couple of these. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm just going to give you probably 2 types of examples that I want you to know how to do. Okay, the next one's a little harder. So we start by writing down the difference quotient. So you just want to get that written down. Then the whole thing is over h. And again, when you set this up, you want to have 2 brackets. Draw pretty big on your paper too, because you have to take up quite a bit of space when you do that. So you want to get everything set up like that down. Okay, so the f of x goes here. All right, so you're going to put the f of x there. Don't do anything with it, just put the 2x, x squared plus 2x plus 1 there. Okay? Then what goes here is the same thing with the one key exception. Where you see an x, you're going to replace it with x plus h. So instead of x squared, you have x plus h squared. Instead of 2x, you have 2 times x plus h. So you got to make sure that you know clearly the difference between these two. See, all I did was just wrote the function there, and then instead you change the x to x plus h. All right, now I'm going to do a couple of things at the side of the paper here. I'm going to do this part right here, just kind of on scratch paper. So if I do x plus h squared, the best way to do that is to write that out twice and then FOIL that. So if you do that, the first term will be x the second. Okay, like that. Outside term is plus xh. Doesn't matter what order you put that in. The inside term is hx or xh. That's up to you what order you put that in. Then the last term is h times h is h to the second. Now these two things here are like terms, so there's 1 plus 1, so you would have x the second plus 2xh plus h the second. So a lot of you maybe need to go back and review the FOIL and how to do that effectively. Okay, so you have to do that way. A common mistake, a lot of times students on this want to go x squared plus h squared. That is not correct. That never works. You have to write it out twice and do the FOIL. All right, so what I'm going to do is replace this part with x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. See, that takes care of that part. Then I do the distributive property, so that is plus 2x plus 2h, and I still have the plus 1. And then again, you can think of this, if it's helpful to you, as distributing by -1. So that would be minus 1x the second minus 2x, and a -1 times a +1 is -1. So you got to get all those signs correct when you do that, and that's all over h. Okay, now you can pause this video anytime you want to. If you're having trouble seeing what I did, stop it and think about it a little bit and see how I set that up and what I did. Now, do you see stuff canceling? Yes, that cancels, 2x minus 2x, 1 minus 1. So what you're left after the cancellation is that stuff there. So what you'll do now, this is 2xh plus h the second plus 2h all over h. And then what you want to do is factor an h out. You have two ways you can do this. Okay, I'm going to show you both ways you can do this. So you have an h that comes out. So you take an h out and draw a parenthesis. So h has to be multiplied by 2x to get 2xh. H has to be multiplied by h to get h the second. And then h has to be multiplied by 2 to get this. And these are background issues that some students in this class have some issues with. So what will happen is after you take that h out, and every time you factor something, check it. Just do the distributive property and make sure you did that right. Now you can cross that out, and then the answer to the problem is 2x plus h plus 2. So that would be the final answer to that problem would be that then. Okay. All right. Now, I was going to show you one other way you could finish this up. If you go back to this step right here, where you have 2xh plus h the second plus 2h over h, if you prefer, you can do it this way. You can break this up into pieces like this, and sometimes students understand this better, and then cross that out, and that crosses out one of the h's if you do that. So that's 2x plus h plus 2. So if you prefer to do it that way, you certainly can. All right, so you're going to work on this. I'm going to let you pause and do these two problems, and then that'll be the end of the video. And then we got one last part that I'm going to go through. So go ahead and do that now. Pause, see if you can put these together. Okay, so this is what you should have got, and these kind of problems sometimes a little challenging for some students to learn, and particularly if you have some algebra weaknesses in your background. First one you should have got 1. Second one you should have got 2x plus h minus 3. So first of all, you want to look at the setup. I want to understand I did the setup. Remember, this is f of x. That's what I give you. The only difference with this bracket and this bracket is this x turns into x plus h. So instead of x minus 4, it's x plus h minus 4. And then, basic algebra. X plus h minus 4, distribute the negative through to get this. The x's and 4's cross out, you're left with h over h. Anything divided by itself is 1. Okay, so if you didn't get that, correct yourself and learn from your mistakes. The second one, the second bracket, again, is what I gave you. Okay, whatever I give you is the second bracket. That's a good place to start. Now, the only difference between what's in the brackets is x squared is, instead, it's x plus h squared. Minus 3x, instead, it's minus 3x plus h. Okay, then you can see kind of how I did the distributive properties. When I squared this, that's x squared plus 2x plus h squared. You got to FOIL that. This is minus 3x minus 3h. This is minus x squared plus 3x. If you get all those terms correct, cancel out the things that cancel. write down what's left, and then you can factor an h out of that to get this expression here, and then the h's cross out. And that'll always happen. If you do this right, though, the h will cross out in that denominator at the very end. All right, so that'll wrap us up on that, and you may have to work on that difference quotient a little bit. It's a good algebra activity. We won't go into, in this class, in depth what the meaning of this. That's more of a calculus topic, but we like students to see this if they're going to calculus, and if you're not, it doesn't matter. It's a good exercise. All right, so best of luck. Let me know if you have any problems.